This is going to be a session where the registrants are going to be able to get 3 self-directed CE hours on this, just to note that. So stay tuned for the next 3.5 hours and you can get those CE credits. I will mention that this particular meeting is being recorded. If you could, when you are not speaking, could you please mute yourself, just so we don't have any confusion as far as the audio on it. We will be streaming this session on YouTube. It will therefore not be possible to introduce everyone themselves, so I'm going to partake and try at least to do so without tearing up somebody's last name. Participating today is Stephen Kinsella, who is the Vice Chair, who is a public member, Ms. Diana Bristow, who is a public member, Ms. Jacqueline Kopp Rasmussen, who is a public member, Mr. Omar Farouk, which is a public member. Amber Fournier is going to be sending her regrets. She is not here, and she is an elected member. Peggy Judge, our new member, public member, she is here with us today. Mr. Samir Madhura, who is the elected member, optician member. Ms. Neda Mohadzan is an optician member, an elected member. Sorry, Neda, I buggered up that last name again. Darina Reitz is a elected member. Hi, Darina. Elected member, Mr. Mike Smart, can't forget him. Mr. Ed Viverus, I don't believe he is on yet, so he will be joining us shortly. He is an elected member. Our other new public member, Mr. Henry Wisimi, he is just joining us. Thank you for joining us today. Another public member who I don't believe is on yet, who will be joining us, is Mr. Jack Zwicker, who is also, again, another public member. Welcome to you all. Again, there's other regrets, as I had mentioned, Amber Fournier, and the other regrets is going to be Ingrid Koned, who is also a elected member. Both of these people are elected members to the council. The facilitator today is Sarah Butson, and she's going to handle all our expertise as best she can. I will also introduce the staff members. We have the Right Honorable Mr. Fazal Khan, Registrar, Melanie Woodbeck, who is the Deputy Registrar. Thanks a lot, Mel. Amy Stein, who is our legal counsel, and Mayte Ashente, who is a project assistant, who is going to help us out with our technical issues. Patricia Rigo, coordinator registration. Carolyn Robertson, the managing communications and executive office. So that pretty well takes care of the introductions, I believe, as far as that goes. So we're going to move on to welcoming, first of all, the 2 public members. I'm going to ask that Henry, if you could just give us a brief synopsis of you, and then we'll go over to Peggy, if you could, please. You may have to unmute him.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Now we can, yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, it was a bit of a battle here getting this all organized, but I'm on and excited to be on this college board. Background, yeah, education all my life, high school, grade school, and independent schools, Christian schools. I was principal for 23 years and high school teacher for 11, and family of 5, 16 grandkids. It's this pretty exciting stuff in the sense it's totally foreign and new to me. I've been on a lot of boards, but nothing like a college board like this. So it should be interesting. I leafed through a lot of information there for the last couple of days, so we'll go to it.
Thank you very much, Henry. Well, we'll certainly keep you busy besides your 16 grandchildren, that's for sure. Moving on to Peggy. Peggy, could you tell us a little bit about yourself? Unmute, Peggy.
Oh, hi. So I'm trained as an engineer. Shortly after graduating, I worked a bit in consulting. Did a grad degree in engineering in wind and wave engineering, actually. Then I did an MBA, and I was working as controller for a reinsurance underwriting management company. And then I've been mom, which is, I have to say, a big job depending on what sort of things you tackle. Involved in a lot of volunteer things in my neighborhood and at the kids' school. And they're almost launched. I feel like, wow, okay, maybe the job's done. Although I hear that it's never done. And this is just an exciting new thing to get involved in, and I really look forward to it. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Peggy. Well, we welcome you, both of you, and we look forward to many good discussions over the table with you two participating. Thank you very much. I do have to mention too that we are losing two public members. Jack Zwicker, who has been with us for approximately a year or so, will not be coming back, and we thank Jack for his participation and his contribution to the college. And secondly, Omar Farouk. Omar, you've been such a great asset to this college. It is going to be certainly our loss that you have not been reappointed. I thank you very much, and the college thanks you very much for all your participation. I consider you a friend, and I am sorry to see you go, sir.
Appreciate it very much. Thanks.
Okay, so thank you for that introductions. And now I'm going to hand it over to Sarah so that we can get the ball rolling. And bearing in mind that we have time constraints, we have a very ambitious agenda here today. So not to try and cut off debate, but just make sure that we keep an eye on the clock because we have an awful lot to go through. So Sarah?
Great. Thanks, Brian. And nice to see everyone's faces again and some new faces as well today. So my name is Sarah and I'm with Facilitation First. So I'm here to virtually facilitate our meeting for today. I want to start by just going over a couple of the process pieces, particularly for folks who are new, so you get a sense of the process that we'll be going through. So in your package, you received this new lovely placard that's been created. And that placard outlines the virtual meeting norms. So these are some of the things that we've agreed on will help us have an efficient meeting. So a couple of reminders, those are on the right-hand side there. So do not put the call on hold or use speakerphones. Try to minimize the background noise as much as possible by muting yourself if you're not speaking. Similarly, try to mute all of your other types of technology that might be going on. I'll hop over the next one because we'll be able to see you virtually. Stay present. So if you can keep your webcam on, it helps to kind of engage with the whole group and stay focused. I know it can be tempting on calls to try to tackle a couple of different things at once, but as they alluded to, we have a heavy agenda today with a lot of topics, so it really will be quite a present and engaging meeting. If you can announce if you're going to leave or enter the room, just so that we have a sense of who's with us. And then we're going to be using the virtual hand raising feature this meeting. Last meeting we did some in-person hand raising, and it was a bit more challenging to track. So if you do have a question throughout the meeting or a discussion point, what we'd ask is that you actually raise your virtual hand. And you can do that by going into the Manage Participants section of your Zoom and then actually just clicking the raise hand button. So those are kind of the norms and agreements that will get us through the meeting. The other piece that I want to mention is on the left-hand side here where we see the big high five. So throughout the meeting, we're going to have a number of discussion points, some where we're just going to be seeking your opinion, and some are going to be for information only, and then others are going to be for a motion. So we try to use a motion when we need to make a quick decision about something or reach a final decision about something. We'll seek a motion. And in doing that, what we're going to be asking for this meeting is we always need a first or a second for a motion. So if you'd like to be that first or that second, you can unmute yourself and raise and state your name. So Steve, if it was going to be you, or Jacqueline, you could just unmute and say, Jacqueline, and we'll catch you as first or second. And then what we're actually going to ask folks do for every motion is go into your, again, your Manage Participants area and actually hit the thumbs up or the thumbs down button virtually to let us know if you're yaying the motion or naying the motion. And then we'll give a count for each of the motions. So that's a little bit different than what we did last time. And we'll give some reminders for the first few. Before we get to a motion, we usually do a high five, and that helps us get a sense of the group consensus. So, and again, you have this in front of you, but a reminder, when we get to a certain speaking point, I'll ask the group, can I see a show of 5? And really, if you're gonna, and this will be physically in the screen, if you can put your hand up and if you give me 5 fingers, it means you love the idea, really wanna go forward. If you give me 4, it means you can live with it. And we're really looking for anything above a 4. So 4 or 5, we can move forward to a motion. 3 means I like it, but there's 1 or 2 things I need to talk about or have changed in order to get there. 2 means I like it, but I need a lot of changes. And then 1 is, this is not not the thing for me, I hate it. So that's the high five process that we'll use throughout for consensus seeking. And then the final page there that you have within the placard, I won't go over, but this is a great reference document for yourself to look at, which is questions to consider when making board decisions. And it really kind of prompts and grounds the decision-making process to remind us all of, why we're here and why we're making the decisions that we're making. Okay, thanks. We can stop sharing that. The other piece in terms of process, so I think last meeting was our first foray into the virtual meeting forum. This meeting, we're going to introduce some additional participation elements, really look for opportunities for everyone to get a chance to speak throughout the meeting. So you'll see that we've done that in a couple of areas where we'll actually do a go around and hear from everyone. And then occasionally I may actually also, call out and say, Mike, what do you think about this? We haven't heard from you in a while. So we'll be including some of these kind of participation elements as well throughout the meeting. So before we move on, maybe we'll do a practice high five, just testing to see, are folks comfortable with me introducing some of those participation elements into the meeting today? So 5 if you love it, 4 or 5. I got some 4 people are all right with it. Okay, it's looking pretty good all around. Okay, super. So having said that, I'm actually going to hand the meeting back to Brian to run through some of the opening pieces.
Thanks very much, Sarah. At this particular time, I'm going to ask if anyone has any conflict of interest prior to the meeting starting. You've all had a chance to look over the package and look at the documentation. So this is the time to suggest if there is a potential conflict of interest that you may have, is the time to declare it now. So I'm just looking around to see if there's anyone that has any issues. I see a lot of no's. I'm going to assume that that's okay. And I think I'm going to hand it back to you then, Sarah, so that we can go for the adoption of the agenda.
Yeah, and actually I'll allow you to go through with the agenda process.
Thank you very much then. Thank you very much. So I'm looking for, therefore, then a motion to adopt the agenda. And in
So
this,
Brian,
sorry,
do you mind if I step in for 1 sec?
go right ahead.
Could I ask a request just to switch item 12.6 and 12.4?
Okay.
I think it'll flow a little bit better. So just moving 12.6 ahead of 12.4.
Okay, will Melanie make a note of that, please, or Caroline? Thank you. Thank you, Fazal.
Thank you.
No other changes I see that that are being asked. So I'll ask for a motion to adopt the agenda, if I could, please.
Steve.
Steve.
Mike.
And Mike seconded.
Okay,
All in favor?
then, yeah,
Sorry,
so
Sarah.
perfect. No, I was just going to say this is a good practice for us to do the all in favor. So just a reminder for you to do that virtually, doing the thumbs up or the thumbs down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, virtually.
So Omar's got it with a thumbs up.
Yep.
Couple more. So reminder, we need to see thumbs up or
There we
thumbs
are.
down.
Help me out here. Where's the thumbs button? Where is that?
So if you can't see it, you might see a button that says more. And if you click on the more button, you should be able to see something that looks like a thumbs up and something that looks like a thumbs down.
Well, I'm on the more button. And all I have is chat and record on this computer.
I think you have to click
On yours, it
participants
might be
first.
under reactions. There's a little smiley face with a plus.
Not mine. This is under the word more, where the word more is, right?
Okay.
Full
You
screen.
need to go to participants.
Okay, here, hang on. Okay, and then,
So click on the participants and then in the bottom right, there's a more.
okay, there's the more holy macro. Okay, here we go. Thumbs up.
That's why we'll do a practice.
Perfect.
Okay, so I'm seeing a couple, but not all yet. Dorina, are you abstaining or just kind of go down my list?
So
It's
did
got
you
a
get
thumbs up
mine?
on the screen?
Sarah, did you get my thumbs up?
I did not. Do you, Brian,
Well,
do
I'm-
you see them?
I'm pressing
Um,
I'm pressing on the button.
There we got
Thumbs
your
up.
hand. Yep, we got your thumbs up there, Henry.
Okay, I didn't
Yep.
see it on my
I
screen.
did that
that's all.
too. You
I'm
don't
wondering
see
if we-
mine?
I don't
I
see
di-
yours, Dorina. No.
How about now?
No.
No.
Hmm. Now what? Because
I can see
did press
Dorina's.
it
I'm
many-
not.
You're using reactions, Adrena. Like maybe go to the participants panel.
Yeah.
I could see Dorina's on the screen. It popped up in a big yellow hand.
Yeah, that was more of an emotion.
Oh,
emoticon.
okay. Okay.
So raise hands then.
There, oh, you got a raised hand. If you go to the right, Dorina, on that, you'll have more.
So that thumb up. Okay.
Yes,
There you go.
perfect.
Perfect. Okay, and we've got
And then Ned-
thumbs up. Netta, are you abstaining or?
I did the thumbs up. I see it on my screen. Nobody sees it.
That's the reaction emotion emoticon. You'll need to go to a different section for under participants.
Okay.
And then on that right side panel, there's a button that says more. Yep, perfect, Netta.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay,
This is a good practice run.
It's a good
This
practice
is-
run, yeah.
Samir's there. This is a full house.
Okay, that looks good. I think we have a full house. Yep.
Okay.
Good.
So that carries.
It carries. Thank you, everyone. Okay. Is Patricia going to share 2.0 on the screen? Thank you. Perfect. Okay. Thanks very much, Patricia. So what we're showing here, or we will show, is the amendments to the minutes. Or does anyone have any amendments to the minutes? This is from the minutes, by the way, of May 11th, 2020. So I ask if there's any amendments that anybody has. I don't believe that there are any. I can't see on the screen right at the moment, so my apologies. If I don't see anything, then I could ask, would someone like to make a motion to approve the minutes, please, as circulated?
I do, Omar.
Omar makes the motion. Any seconder?
Henry, second.
Henry seconds. All in favor?
We'll do the thumbs up again.
Thumbs up again.
Yeah, as soon as I get to my button, hang on. Here we go.
Okay.
I have a
And
question.
Peggy? Yep.
Yes, Peggy.
I would need to abstain from this because I wasn't at the
Yes.
meeting, so I can't comment on the previous minutes. Should we adopt something for abstaining from a vote?
Great question.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, I'll just jump
Go
in.
ahead.
You're absolutely, anybody can either vote for, against, or abstain. And then usually we, with the new policy, request a reason for abstention. So Peggy, you've done it perfectly. We'll note it in the minutes that you've abstained for reasons that you weren't part of the last meeting.
What
And
about a
Carolyn
raised,
recorded.
what about a raised hand in this case, so that you're acknowledging that you exist, but
That you'd like to speak?
no, just in terms of the voting, it's thumbs up or thumbs down, but we need a neutral of some sort?
So usually it's either you're for, against, or you abstain. Those are the three. So unfortunately, we don't have an icon with Zoom for that. So if we don't see your thumb in either direction, we'll come back and check on you.
On for coffee.
Fantastic.
Good point. Yes. So therefore, then Peggy and Henry, you would be both abstaining from the vote because of the same reason.
Amy, is it okay for Henry to be the one to move or second the motion if he wasn't here for?
Good point.
If anyone can bring the motion.
Okay.
So I don't necessarily see an issue with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
No,
Thank
and
you.
I read the minutes.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. So I don't have the ability of seeing it on my screen, but do we have consensus on that then?
So we do.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, Sarah, I'm going to pass it back to you. I think you're going to be going to see Melanie on financial updates.
That's right. So we'll bring the floor now to Melanie to give us the financial updates.
Okay, and can everyone see my screen okay?
Yep,
I
good
can.
for me.
Perfect. Okay, so here are the budget actuals for 2019 and 2020 to May 31st. The green bars represent what was budgeted. The blue bars are the actuals, and the gray bars, blue bars actuals to May 31st, 2020, and gray bars actuals to May 31st, 2019. So starting with the left hand of the chart, you'll see that our total revenue to date is just over 3 million, which is about 8% lower than the budgeted amount, which is expected at this time of the year because there's additional revenues yet to be realized, namely examination and student intern revenues. That being said, due to COVID, we may not reach the expected levels of revenue given postponement of the spring exam to the fall and deferral of student graduation dates this fall. It should still be noted that revenue is higher than it at this time in the year than it was last time in the year. In terms of operations and administration, we're at 1,092,000, which is very slightly higher than last year. And as for council and committees, we're at 54,000, a little bit lower than what was spent to date last year. However, it should be noted that we had some extra meeting with completing our strategic plan. We have seen a bit of a reduction in expenses due to the virtual meetings we've been having and a deferral of meeting fees due to COVID. So that deferral will be realized shortly as the expenses start flowing in. So here's the variance in terms of our revenue to budget. The bars in green, which they're all, show where there's a negative variance or where we're under budget. You'll see we're still at a high variance for 4 to 5 of our revenue streams. Instead of 2 large national exam sessions in April and October, due to COVID, we're anticipating a fall exam that has probably fewer candidates due to the deferred graduation dates, as I mentioned. The cost of administering the exam may also be higher than normal due to extra costs associated with ensuring the health and safety of candidates, examiners, and invigilators, also due to COVID. So here's a closer look on the variances to council and committee budgets. We've already discussed the deferral of committee fees, again, due to COVID. So these variances will likely be reduced in the coming months. So this slide shows a closer look at the budget variances for operations lines, with green being under budget and blue being over budget. Of note is the investigator line over budget by 42%. The variance is due to an influx of 16 insurance fraud investigations this year. Looks like a large amount, but in terms of dollars, it's about an overage of $15,000 above what was budgeted. At this stage of the year, the other variances are expected. Items like consulting, board development, strategic initiatives will have their variances reduced over the coming months as some of the board's strategic projects are completed. And that concludes the presentation.
Great. Thank you, Melanie. Are there questions around the financial report? And a reminder that you can use the virtual raise hand function if you do have a question. Brian, I saw yours though.
Thank you. Mel, just with the overage of the investigators column for the ICRC, is there any thought process to increasing the budget for next year to accommodate for that overage, providing the fact that we assume that it's going to continue that way?
Yeah, definitely something for the finance committee or executive to take into account. It's like this year was higher than the year previous. So, and there was extra money budgeted for this line, but it's even exceeded our expectations. So definitely something to consider and to monitor the trends for the rest of the year to see if we're getting many more investigations there.
Thank you.
Great. Omar?
Yeah, I noticed rent and salaries are in the same similar column, 59%. It's interesting to know some of the reasons why, or is this normal?
Yeah, at this point of the year, half the year has passed, so we can expect that the salaries and rent lines have been, you know, up to 50% of has been spent. So I think pretty normal to this time of year.
Okay. And Peggy, I see your hand up. Just a reminder, you can use the virtual hand when I'm more likely to catch. but go ahead.
The rent and the salaries or costs were at what percentage at this point?
So right now we have a variance of under 59% to the budget.
So relative to the year, you're over. If it should be at 50% at this point, well, maybe a little bit more because some of July may have been expended without doing the calculations.
Yeah. You know, it's possible, like at this point of the year, maybe slightly over. But we are doing things, you know, when the budget was set, you know, maybe slightly different than when the budget was set, just in terms of like RSP used to be given at the end of the year. Now it's given throughout the year. Just some small things like that. Sorry, that was rent. That was at 59. Also salaries at minus 59% variance. So definitely something to monitor for the rest of the year.
Melanie, it's 59% below, so it's it's underspent by 59%.
Yep.
Okay. But I'm saying that that's more than 50%, and if you're 50% of the way through the year and it's spread evenly over the year, you would expect it to be at more closer to 50. That's what I was questioning.
Oh, at this point of the year, yeah, this is to May 31st. You know, we also have some summer help during the summer.
No, but we're actually underspent right now. Like we're almost 60% underspent, which makes sense because this is not, this is till May. It's not the halfway mark.
And it's under, okay, sorry.
Yeah. So this is actually correct. Like it's, we're under by 60%. And I think this reporting is till the end of May. I think it's tallied up. So I think we're tracking okay. But it's a good point, Peggy.
Great, thanks. And I see another hand, but before we get to that, I just want to welcome, I think Edward has joined us as well. So welcome, Edward. And then we have a question from Samir.
It's not a question. Yes, Fazal actually said it correct. Like it is actual to the May 31st. We spent 41% to the budget. If you think from 100% for the year, so we are actually on track for that. That's my understanding when I see this report there.
Yeah. Thanks. Thank you, Samir.
Good. And it looks like there's no other raised hands. So if there's no more questions on the financials, then we will turn it to Fazal to take us through the COVID update.
Perfect. I'm going to carry a pretty good click just so we can catch up on our agenda. So I've started preparing COVID reports for each of our board meetings. And so it's in everybody's package. I'll try to highlight a couple of things. One is for sure, everyone is aware that we're working remotely, and we still are, and I think quite effectively. The website, we're continually updating the FAQs. We do get questions regularly at Practice Advice. We've actually split up Practice Advice between myself and Peggy Dreyer. So we're sort of trying to increase response times or improve our response times to registrants who are asking for assistance. And whenever we see a trend, we're updating the FAQ section. There's been a lot of questions, for instance, regarding mask usage. So we have been updating those, and we've been doing broadcasts by email to the entire registration base as needed. The directory of urgent care providers we've suspended for now. Now that opticians are back to work, patients are able to access care far more easier. The national registration exams is a topic that is being given a lot of attention internally at the office. We've been informed that Georgian is unable to host any external requests for using their facilities. That's where we usually hold the exams. So we are actively pursuing at the registration level alternate venues that respect social distancing and all the disinfection and PPE requirements. So we are working with the national group as well, NACOR, and internally. So we'll keep you posted as we develop a plan for the fall session. And those are the main highlights. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to take any questions.
I see one from Brian.
Yeah, it's not a question, Fazal. I just wanted to certainly, I think on behalf of the college, to compliment you and your team for guiding us through this very difficult time. You've been on top of it. In fact, you've been even leading some of the other regulatory colleges in our actions as far as helping our registrants out. And I just wanted to make that comment that you and your team have done a fine job with this.
Thank you, Brian.
Any other questions?
Okay.
No, I'm not seeing any. Okay, so now Fazal will take us through a discussion on the registration fee adjustment.
Perfect. If you can give me 1 second, I'm going to bring that briefing note up for myself. Okay, I'm all set. So this is a return to a topic that we discussed at the May board meeting. The executive had brought to the board a briefing note speaking to reducing the fees for the 2021 renewal season. In light of the pandemic, a lot of or almost all the registrants were sidelined for several months, and from a public protection or public interest point of view, the college was looking at making sure that we have a sufficient supply of opticians in the workforce in 2021, and we were looking at if we had the ability through our reserves to reduce next year's registration fees. And so a proposal was made Several options were looked at. The options are laid out 1 to 5, including issuing a rebate for the current year, reducing the registration fees for next year. We looked at deferrals, extensions, all of those things, all the logistics involved and the financial impact to the board. So the board had in May approved in principle reducing the 2021 registration fee by $200, which was about 20%. And we would be dipping into our reserves, our general reserves. So the general reserves are about $900,000. And we circulated this. We did get a lot of feedback from the registrants and the stakeholders. So a survey was sent out shortly after the board meeting. The responses are part of your package. And then this information was looked at again by the executive/finance committee. And I think it was overwhelming that the registrants obviously supported a reduction in fees. Many were asking if it was possible to dig a bit deeper. So the executive has brought in front of you a proposal about the amount. The other discussion that occurred at the last board meeting was whether to extend this reduction to only those registrants who were already registered in 2020 or to all incoming registrants for 2021. So I'll first talk about the first part of it, which is the amount. So in the table, what we've done is we've given you sort of what the financial impact is of a percentage base from 10 to 30%, the amount of the discount in the registration fee that the registrant would experience, and the impact on or sort of the deficit that it would create, as well as how long it would take approximately to replenish that amount into the reserves. So the the executive committee, the finance committee was initially looking at about a little over 20%, $200. Looking at what we have in reserve, they are proposing to move it up to 25%, about a little over 25%, $250 is a round amount. That would eat up about $745,000 of our $900,000 reserve. Part of the thought process there was we aren't sure what's going to happen in the fall, as we might possibly hit another wave of the pandemic. The second thing, one thing we do know for sure, as Melanie had alluded to in the finance variances, we typically expect revenues to come in that form part of our budget, which are from exams, from student intern registration fees and exam fees. From what we hear from the schools, they are busy getting the spring cohort out and ready for exams, and those will be the ones hopefully writing it in October. The cohort that's a batch that usually writes in the fall is being pushed off because of the lack of facilities to complete practicals and things like that. So I think total we are going to be down on exam revenue. So we should keep that in mind because that'll also have to be buffered by our general reserves. So in front of you is a proposal to move from $200 to $250. The second part of the briefing note is considerations on whom to extend it to. The finance committee is recommending we extend it without any qualification to anyone who's renewing their registration in 2021 and to incoming opticians who are registering for the first time and obviously have been hit with some hardships over this year. The reasoning also not to exclude people from this is that although you may not have been registered in 2020, there could have been a reason such as you're on maternity leave or sick leave. And so it might be seen as penalizing those who would have been off for a good reason. So the executive committee is recommending apply to anyone renewing or registering for 2021. So Brian, I'd like to turn it over to you to check with the board what their thoughts are.
Sorry, I muted myself.
Yeah, no problem.
Is there any comments or thoughts before we go ahead and look for a motion on this. I see Henry's name.
Yeah, a question, Fazal,
Yes, Henry.
in terms of supply and demand, if you will, in terms of the situation with opticians in Ontario. What's the total number we have now?
A touch over 3,000.
Okay, now what kind of need is there?
I think if you, I'm going to be speaking anecdotally here, but from the schools who are trying to fill co-op placements, typically to employers who are running job fairs all the time, there seems to be, if there's an optician available, they're in high demand. So it's almost like already pre-COVID, they were already in high demand. Going forward, we'll have to see. Anybody who I've spoken to who has reopened their practice has been busy. So I think the demand is going to keep going forward in 2021.
Okay, then the next question that I'm curious about. So by reducing the registration fees and what have you, that's going to mean there's more students or people that are interested. What's the impact of that going to be on the colleges?
We're hoping that pretty much everyone's expressed that they've been hit financially. This would be a one-time reduction because there is a fee table that we work by that's set every 5 years. So this would be a one-time reduction for the fact reflecting the pandemic that we are in. We are looking going forward on a project separate and aside from this long-term as to if we can cap or reduce our fees going forward. So that's separate. We're working with an accounting firm to analyze that. So this is strictly related to the pandemic and relief for that.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And then Steve.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I just wanted to thank staff for bringing these options for consideration to the board. I think it's a very fiscally responsible action. We listened to the membership at large as to what their needs were. And I think this is a great step moving forward. And I think other colleges should follow suit in what we're doing here. We're leading the way. It's a job well done.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Okay, then we have Peggy and then Mike. Oh, you're still muted, Peggy.
Hi. Okay, unmuted. With respect to giving the decrease to the people who weren't working for whatever reason in 2020, I'm thinking, well, if they weren't planning to have any income from being an optician this year, then they haven't taken a financial hit this year. So is it really fair that they get a discount for next year? Because presumably you're trying to give a sort of retroactive break because they haven't had the income stream that they would have had this year.
Do you mind if I speak to that for a sec? So Peggy, I think the thought was we're coming from a sort of a public interest point of view, where we're trying to stimulate our overarching purpose is to stimulate registrations and renewals for 2021. So at the lower rate, we thought that we would achieve that. It's hard to speculate how people were impacted. It could be that somebody was on maternity leave and their spouse was impacted as well. And so their household has taken a hit. So we just thought we have the funds to do it. We've always been really fiscally careful. We've been amassing, and this is probably the time to crack open the piggy bank. So on those two sort of levels, we had sort of said, or the executive had proposed extending it to all.
I think, yeah, maybe a bit along the lines of we all as a society need to be sharing the hit of the COVID.
Yeah.
And I've heard of other people saying they aren't personally hit, but they're trying to help out other people who have been.
Yeah. Perfect.
Good. Okay. And Mike, you had your hand up.
Yes, I was thanks again. Just was wondering, Fazal or whoever, Did we not approve this for the 200 at the last meeting? So what do we have to rescind that? Or it's just a new
No.
motion and we move forward?
Mike, because it's bylaw driven, we approved it in principle in the May board meeting, but it had to be circulated because it is a bylaw amendment. And so based on the feedback, it's being brought back to the board with a tweak.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so I'm not seeing any other hands. So because this is kind of has a couple aspects to it, let's do the high five for consensus. Let's do it on each of the pieces individually. So if we start with the increased reduction to $250, a show of hands, the high five in terms of your comfort level with that. I'm seeing, okay. Okay, looks like, and Edward, I just couldn't see your hand. Okay, there we go. Good. So it looks like we have consensus on that piece. And then on the second piece, with the recommendation that it apply to all registrants and applicants in 2021. Is everyone comfortable with that? Again, if we do the high five. Okay. Nice and high. Okay, that looks good. So Brian, I'll pass it to you for a motion then.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Okay, so I'm going to call for a motion to approve the bylaw amendments to reduce registration fees by $250 for registered opticians or registrants, I should say, in 2021 as recommended by the executive committee.
It's Jacqueline. I'll make the motion.
Jacqueline makes the motion. Seconder.
Netta.
I saw Ed's hand and I heard Netta's voice. Okay, I'm going to give this to Netta. Ed, next time it's yours. You and Samir can fight it out later. All in favor?
So everybody can use their thumbs up.
Use their thumbs up.
Okay.
Are you monitoring that then, Sarah?
Peggy, so I'm seeing a couple. Oh, that's changed to a thumbs up. Okay, super. Okay. Henry, were you abstaining or? Okay, there we go. And I think, let's see, Edward, were you abstaining or?
Excuse me for just butting in. Ed wasn't here for a part
Yes,
of the.
very good.
so-
Yeah. So Edward, what we said we would do is if you're in favor of a motion, you can go to your participant tab and then actually hit the thumbs up button. So if you're in favor of thumbs down, if you would like to nay the motion. So you can give that a practice here if you want.
Okay.
Okay, let's see here. I saw.
There you are.
There we are. Super. Okay, so that's everyone.
Good. Thank you very much, people. Motion is passed.
Good. So now we'll pass it to Derek to give a presentation on the accreditation policy.
All righty. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for having me here to do this. Everybody can hear me okay? So let's go. So before you today is a briefing note from the Quality Assurance Committee, just to go over the highlights of it. At its meeting on April 6, 2020, the QAC recommended updating the accreditation policy to introduce a more rigorous review of course content and developing a comprehensive checklist for the professional members of the committee to refer to when reviewing materials submitted for accreditation. At its meeting on April 30th and June 5th, the QAC reviewed proposed updates to the accreditation policy and that would enhance the review of the course content and developed a comprehensive checklist that the professional members of the QAC committee will use as a guide when accrediting CE activities. So to highlight the major changes that are in front of you, CE providers must identify the competencies covered with the activity, within the activity. The CE providers must demonstrate the CE presenters have relied on objective, neutral, and reliable sources to support the course content. CE content must have as its primary purpose the advancement of professional competency and scientific knowledge in the practice of opticianry, and must not primarily be for the purpose of endorsing a specific product or brand. Amendments to defining the eyeglass and contact lens categories to include topics in this category would not be product specific. Additionally, amending the renewal process to remove the one-time automatic renewal that was in place of a CE activity when requested within 60 days of its expiry, and including the accreditation checklist as an appendix to the policy for providers to review to ensure that continuing education activity meets the required criteria. So the two of the major CE providers were invited to a session to gather feedback on the proposed updates. The providers were generally in favor of the proposed changes, and they agreed that they did not believe the college should accredit CE that was essentially a commercial for a particular device or brand. One provider expressed, however, that it felt that it remained important for the college to continue to accredit CE activities that address specific products, as long as the presentation was technical in nature and aimed at educating opticians about product design and use, rather than price of competitive advantage. It was also noted that various NACOR competencies directly related to the need for opticians to understand the characteristics of specific products. The other provider was not concerned with accrediting CE that addresses specific products. Other than that, other areas of concern that came up included that some of the current accredited activities are inconsistent with the proposed update and do not appear to be available to all opticians as required by our current policy. So we're trying to tackle all of that. So what we've got in front of you is to approve with amendments the updated accreditation policy and the comprehensive checklist, and determine the effective date of the updated policy if approved. We'd like that effective date to be September 1st. That's the recommendation of the committee. So that brings me to either a motion or some discussion.
Great. Any questions on the policy changes? Okay, not seeing any specific questions. Any concerns from folks around removing the specific, the product specific continuing education studies? And I'm seeing a hand up from Mike. Go ahead.
Thanks. I think it's long overdue, and I think the checklist in itself is I think the intent of past QA committees was to do exactly what we're doing and was approved, but we never had a checklist for the actual committee as it changed. So I think the checklist itself is going to keep the committee on the same page. So I'm in favor for sure.
Thanks, Mike. Other comments from folks around the use of the checklist? Okay, why don't we look for consensus here? Again, we've got kind of two pieces here. The first with show of hands again for the high five around believing that the checklist is a good way for us to ensure that the criteria is being met. Oh, and just actually before, just hold your high five. I just see a question from Edward that I just want to make sure we get to before we.
No, I agree.
Oh, super. Okay. So let's do the high five then. We know we've got it from Edward. Any other, if you want to hold those up high so I can see them in front of the screen. Okay, seeing 4s and 5s. And that looks good. Okay. The second piece is around the effective date. So the recommendation there was September 1st. Do we have consensus with an effective date of September 1st? Again, we'll do another high five. You'll get your exercise in this meeting. Okay, a couple 4s, 5s. Okay. And Omar, if you can just raise yours. I just missed you when I changed screens, and Dorina. Okay. Okay. So it looks like we have 4s and 5s across the board. So I'll move it to Brian to call for a motion.
Thank you, Sarah. So I'm going to call for a motion. Therefore, then the motion will read to approve the updated accreditation policy and comprehensive checklist as recommended by the QA or Quality Assurance Committee to take effect as of September 1st, 2020. I need a mover.
I do.
So move.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm going to give Samir this one because I saw his hand first, and then perhaps I can go with Omar as the second. If that pleases you both, I'll be happy. All in favor? Use your thumbs up.
Aye.
And remember to use your virtual thumbs up there.
Thumbs up.
Okay, we're seeing quite a few thumbs up. Okay. And Peggy, I see a hand for you. Is that a thumbs up, or was it a?
I would just like to abstain because I feel that having not been in the previous meetings, I'm not really fully up to speed.
Okay, we'll note that for the record. Okay, and Henry, I don't see a vote from you. Is it a similar thought? Oh, and you're just muted. There you go.
No, I read through it and I think it's great.
Super. Okay, so that's everyone.
Motion passed.
Thank you, board. I appreciate that on behalf of the committee.
Good. Okay, so we'll now pass it on to Fazelle to look at the college values.
Just unmute myself there. And I'll get my own notes up. All right, board, in front of you is a briefing note, number 7.0 about our college organizational values. Essentially, on a very high level, what's being brought in front of you is, for your consideration, is whether to update our core values. We had articulated them initially in 2015, being transparency, accountability, integrity, and efficiency. It has come up, the college has embraced as part of a strategic direction for 2020 to 2022, that we're embracing diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it came up at our training session in February. Some of the board members had mentioned that our values didn't really articulate some of the values that are part of the diversity, equity, and inclusion proposition. And so we have a table, which is a summary of some of the notes from our training session regarding sort of the values and the statement, the value statements that it proposes. So terms like diversity, inclusivity, respect, equity, and acceptance were terms that were brought up in the working groups that the board members had participated in. So what's in front of you is basically looking at our 4 core values, looking at seeing if there are some values that are articulated in the diversity, equity, and inclusion training that we've come up with that we'd like to include in our core values, and then possibly circling back to the core values that we articulated back in 2015 and seeing if they're still applicable. Sometimes there are values that we articulate that we have now firmly gotten under control, and maybe you might feel that we don't need to list all of the original 4, and maybe you'd want to include a few updated terms and drop a few terms that we've already got under control. So in front of you in your briefing note is basically we're looking for your input as to seeing if you'd like to update our college values. So I turn it back to the board for discussion.
Great. So we'll open the floor to discussion and see if anyone has any questions or comments with respect to the values, and then we'll get into a bit of discussion around them. Okay. Maybe what we'll do is a bit of another high five just to test for whether people feel that there is a need to refresh the values, that the values need to be updated. I see a show of high five around updating the values. folks are open to that. Okay, seeing 4s and 5s. Okay, Netta, I just didn't see yours, and Mike, I just didn't see yours. Super. Okay, so it looks like there is an interest in doing a bit of a refresh. And as Fazal alluded to, there were some additional new terms which could potentially become part of the value list around the diversity, equity, inclusion, respect, and acceptance. So what we thought we would do is actually do a little bit of we're going to call it a round robin. We're just going to get a chance to hear from everyone on the board. And what I'm going to actually do is share my screen. And what we've just done is created a bit of I'm going to call it a tally list for sake of simplicity. This is by no means a decision-making process, but really a feedback and input process to start to look at what might be some of the top values that we might include. And then to Fazal's point, maybe there's some that at this stage we could lose from the list. So I'm going to share my screen now. And then what I'm going to actually do is I have kind of a list of everyone. So I'll just kind of call your name out. We're going to start by looking at the first 5. So just give me one moment here and I will share my screen. So can everyone see that? Maybe Brian, I'll ask you. Just is everyone able to see the screen?
Yes. Yeah. At least I think we can. Yeah.
At least you can.
Yes.
So what I'd love to hear first is if we look at those kind of additional 5 values around diversity, equity, inclusivity, respect, and acceptance. I'd love to hear from folks, and I'm going to call out your name. And if you could tell me that your top 2 or 3, if you really have 3 that you think would be critical values that might be included. So maybe if we can, well, Brian, maybe I'll start with you.
Sure.
We'll make you the guinea pig.
So we can go 2 or 3, correct?
2 or 3.
Okay. Well, diversity certainly is going to be the number one. I think inclusivity is extremely important, and I think respecting the other individuals around you is number 3 for me.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. And Stephen, I'll go to you.
Yeah, I agree. Brian took the words right out of my mouth. Those are the top 3, especially respect. Some of the younger generation has lost respect towards the older generation and society in general. So I think if they see people being equally treated with respect, that they'll understand. And the other 2, diversity, inclusivity, tongue tie, will follow in suit too. So I agree with Brian 100%.
Okay. And Jacqueline?
Had to unmute myself there, sorry. I'm struggling actually with these 5 because I feel that they reflect some core values that we're talking about in general as a society, and that should be incorporated. I do agree 100% with respect. I think that's be all. You need to have that. Inclusivity as well goes hand in hand with that. And I'd like to give all 5. Diversity, I think it's important in that we do have a diverse group, and definitely, in my work on the registration committee, we're seeing that we're getting registrants from, essentially all over the place who come in with, who are very diverse in many different ways.
So maybe, Jacqueline, if I'm paraphrasing you correctly, I could make a comment here that, all 5 are highly important values.
You know what, I think they are, and I think that they could, I know we don't want to have 9 values for the college. I think they could probably replace some of the others that are more objective that I think we've sort of fine-tuned and have built into our mission and our vision for the college. So you can go with those top 3, but I feel I have a hard time picking 3 out of those 5. I think they're all of equal value.
Okay. Great. So we'll make a note of that for consideration. And then Dorina.
Oh, hi. So I think my number 1 would be respect. Number 2 will be acceptance. And number 3 will be equity. The rest are implied.
Okay. Thank you, Dorina. We don't have Jack on the line, right? So we'll skip to Edward.
I would say diversity, equity, and respect.
Okay.
Because equity and respect to me would be hand in hand.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Edward. Omar? Oh, and I can't see. Is Omar muted?
Oh, yeah. Okay, sorry. Each one of them has its values and importance, and sometimes I find it somewhat difficult to make any distinction among them. But having realized the current situation in our community, in our society, what we are facing on a daily basis in terms of racism, etc., I'm focusing on any one of them, or perhaps if all of them, which can in some way eliminate the elements of discrimination. You know.
Mm-hmm. Are there particular ones that call out to you, Omar?
I'm searching. I'm searching to find anyone particular, but. At the very bottom here, acceptance, which I notice has a least score. To me, this is very, very important because of the fact that if we can't accept who we are, what we are, where we come from, despite our ethnicity, if acceptance is missing, then all the above, to me, it's doesn't have any weight. So. From my personal perspective, I would go with diversity, inclusivity, and acceptance.
Okay. So I'm going to make a note here, Omar, and let me know if you if this is correct. But I think you would kind of, second that you think that all of these are highly important. And would it be correct to say values should aim to reduce discrimination?
Absolutely. That's my number 1 take on this whole thing. Whichever can contribute, if all can contribute towards that main aspect of discrimination, I would, I'd be more than happy.
Okay, great. Thank you for that, Omar. Samir.
Thank you for giving me the chance. For me, diversity, inclusivity, and respect. Acceptance, as Omar said, it is correctly, but my understanding is I'm putting acceptance in right into the inclusivity part as well. I see that inbuilt value that is there into the inclusivity. So top 3 would be the diversity, inclusivity, and respect.
Okay. And do folks, maybe what because I've heard that kind of comment a few times, maybe I'll say, values with fewer votes are assumed within the others. So it's not that they're not important, it's that we feel that they can be covered off within the other ones. Would that be correct, Samir?
That is correct, yes.
Super, thank you. Mike.
Okay, I personally, I think the college has done a great job without spelling it out. We're more putting this into language now, I believe. So my is respect number 1, acceptance number 2, and equality number 3 are the my choices, but all 5 are excellent, and I think the college has done a great job. I think we're just going to put it into language. So great job, thanks.
Super. Thanks, Mike. Neda.
Thank you. I agree with everyone, and specifically with Omar regarding reducing the discrimination, that I think if we can put the value in equity, number one, diversity and acceptance, we're going to get close to that point.
Great. Thank you, Neda. And Peggy.
I think that if we accept people for who they are and what they bring to the table, and we respect that, then you've covered the other issues.
Okay, so say those ones to me again. Diversity.
No, sorry, I'm saying if you accept everybody.
Okay, sorry.
For who they are and what they're about and what they can contribute and what their problems are, and you respect them for those things, then you've automatically, the others will follow.
Okay, great. So you would pick acceptance. Would you want to add respect
Yes.
as well? Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you, Peggy. And then Henry, last but not least.
Okay. Am I on?
You are.
Okay, just here we go. All right, I would go, I mean, that's the problem you have when you're last. Everybody said what you're thinking. But anyway, I would go with respect number one, because if you respect people, you accept them. If you accept them, you include them and you feel equal to them, and you're part of a diversity of people that you're dealing with. So, I mean, they interconnect. What I really appreciated about the meeting that I attended back in earlier, was it June or July anyway, on this topic, was I think there was a lot of fine tuning going on, which is good. And I think to refresh values within an organization, I think that's something that's good to do all the time, especially now, given the kind of cultural situation that we're in. So those are my choices.
Great. So you chose respect is the one that I ticked off, and then
Yep.
you said that kind of led into any of the other ones. Did you want to highlight
Acceptance and diversity.
diversity? Great. I'm glad we recorded the way that you interconnected all those. That was well said. Thank you, Henry. Okay, good. Any?
Can I go, Sarah?
Yes.
It's Diana.
Oh, hi. Sorry, Diana. I'm not sure how I jumped over you there. My apologies.
That's okay. First of all, I wanted to say congratulations to the college. I think it's wonderful that you're being proactive and looking at this and really in the lead amongst the colleges. So I'm proud to be part of that. From my perspective, what really stands out to me though is equity, and that everyone be treated equally, no matter where they come from, what their background is, you know, and everyone comes from different backgrounds and perspectives. So equity to me is number one, that you're treated equally no matter what. And then I think respect and inclusivity would be my number 2 and 3.
Okay. Super. Thanks, Diana. So then I think we've actually created quite a nice list here, and I think given some food for thought around the importance of these values. If we look to the existing values around transparency, accountability, integrity, efficiency, if we do another quick go around, I'd love to hear from folks one that you think could potentially be taken off the list of values if we were to eliminate one. And again, so if you pick one, but we could of course make notes if there was other thoughts. So let's go the other way this time, and let's start with Diana, and then we'll go back around.
If I had to pick one to eliminate, it would probably be transparency is just so important. And again, proud of the college and how they handle things. And transparent processes, they're accountable for their actions, and integrity just goes with you know, the importance of everything all together.
Great. Okay, so you pick transparency, and to your
Sorry,
point,
I pick efficiency to eliminate.
efficiency to eliminate. Okay,
Yeah.
super. Great. And to your point, it doesn't mean that it's not an important element. It means that perhaps it's just so intertwined that it doesn't need to be listed out any longer. Henry, is there one that you might suggest could be eliminated?
No, you're forcing me to do something I don't want to do because I think all four are important. But I would go with Diane on efficiency if I had to pick one, but I don't like it.
Okay, I'll make a note. Okay, Peggy?
Sorry. I think I'm with Henry on that. My thought is that all of these values that we're talking about adding really are part of integrity. And that if you're operating with integrity, you respect, you include, you want a diversity that reflects our society, etc.
Okay, so you would potentially vote for that one.
Well, it would be a built-in thing. So you wouldn't necessarily be eliminating integrity, you'd be building it all in together.
Yeah, okay.
If I had to take one out, I guess it probably is the efficiency, because to me, that's almost assumed that you want to do whatever it is you're doing efficiently.
Okay. Okay. Neda.
I would go with majority as well for efficiency.
Okay, super. And Mike?
Again, I agree with everyone. Efficiency would be. It comes with that. But I'm loving these new public. They're very good. Thank you.
Okay, Samir?
To me, I'm looking at the college values, current values. If you are transparent, if you are accountable, if you are you're working with the integrity, efficiency automatically will fall there. So if I were to choose, sadly, I would go for efficiency as well.
Okay, thank you. And Omar?
Yeah, each and every one of these values form the principles that guide our daily behavior at college level and beyond. And as such, it is expected of us to honor and to respect all of them and to live by them. These values comes as a complete set, in the existence of the college, to uphold its vision and to eliminate anyone. It is so difficult. But having go through a thoughtful process here, perhaps the only one that I can put a check mark against is efficiency. Even though it has its values, its underlying values, because without performance in a timely manner and with the resources available to us, then we cannot be efficient. So even though efficient is so important among them all, it hurts really to eliminate efficiency. But under the circumstance, I guess I have no choice but put a check mark against efficiency.
Okay, thank you, Omar. And Edward?
I would say efficiency, because I find efficiency and accountability are basically together, and it's just repetitive. Because if you're accountable, then you're efficient. So I would say efficiency.
Okay, great, thank you. And Dorina?
You cannot take anyone out. They're all important. So To me, they're good. They're kind of intertwined. But I don't think people that are accountable are also efficient. And maybe I'm just going to stay away from everybody else. I'm going to say accountability is off.
Okay. Good on your own. There you go. Okay. Thank you, Dorina. Jacqueline?
I feel like we as a college have definitely shown that we are efficient in our actions and what we have done and continue to do. However, going back to what Peggy had said with integrity, I do feel like the new values of diversity, inclusivity, respect, acceptance, etc., are all encompassed within integrity, but broken out. So I actually feel that if we take on those new values that we discussed and bring them on, that integrity can go, because we're addressing integrity with all of the others. We're taking integrity a step further in 5 different ways. So.
Okay, thank you, Jacqueline. Stephen?
I would say efficiency, because if you're not efficient, then the other 3 above it are going to call you out and say, what's going on, right? And you got to be, so efficiency, I think you take away, because college is always looking for ways to be efficient and continues to be a leader in many ways.
Okay. And then lastly, Brian.
So now I feel like Henry, but I'm going to say efficiency also. Look, I've witnessed over the years with this college, inherently, I think everybody tries to be as efficient as they possibly can. I'm certainly witnessing it, and I think as a council, we are witnessing it with Fazelle and the team, with the college itself. And I think that efficiency, as we have all said, it's important, but inherently, I think everyone is trying to strive to do it the best they can. So if anyone has to be checked off, I would believe it would be efficiency.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. Thank you to everyone for your input. I think that was really valuable to get everyone's feedback on the values and hear your input. What we likely might have to do is actually refer this to a committee, like the Patient Relations Committee, to flesh this out a little bit more and look to definitions, carve these out. Maybe, Brian, what I'll do is pass it to you to move to a motion to actually refer this to committee.
Thank you, Sarah. Yes, I will call for a motion then on this. The motion will read as to refer to Patient Relations Committee to make a recommendation to the board on the value definitions. I'd like a mover and a shaker. Diana's hand is up first. And I see Ed second. So all in favor, thumbs up.
Okay, we've got, I think that's everyone. Great.
Motion pass. May I suggest one thing though, Sarah, is I'm just keeping cognizant of the time, so we're slipping behind a little bit. So just making sure everyone's aware of the time schedule we're on. That's all.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to pass it to Derek now to take us through our next topic, and we'll try to catch up some time along the way.
All right. Hello again, everybody. This is the last time you get to see me for today. So in front of you is a briefing note from the registration committee. And I'm just pulling it up here on my computer. So I've got it in front of me as well. It breaks down into 3 distinct areas as to what we're asking for as a registration committee. So if you're okay with it, I'm going to try and handle it as 3 separate things, if that's all right. So the first one in front of you is changes in the contact lens mentor and student intern supervision policies document. The contact lens mentor and student intern supervision policies currently exclude those registrants who prior to their registration with the college were registered as an optician in another Canadian jurisdiction. To recognize one's previous registration with opticianry regulators and to expand the roster of student and intern supervisors and contact lens mentors, the registration committee proposed an amendment to include a provision for those individuals who were registered as an optician in another Canadian jurisdiction where opticianry is a regulated profession for a minimum of 3 years, or hold a combination of registration in the College of Ontario and an equivalent college regulating opticianry in another Canadian jurisdiction for a minimum of 3 years. So basically what we're looking at doing is, rather than just saying it's 3 years in Ontario, it's 3 years, whether or not, a year of that was recognized in BC, 2 years of that is here. So we're looking, is everybody comfortable with the proposed provision for applicants who are registered for 3 years in another Canadian jurisdiction where opticianry is regulated profession? So what are we thinking?
And so maybe we'll use the high five process here again,
Thank
where
you.
if folks want to give a high five to show their comfort with that. Okay, and Edward, I just can't see your hand up there. Okay. So it looks like folks, we do have consensus there.
Okay. So I guess we'd like to have somebody call for a motion to approve. Sorry, would you like me to do the motions at the end of all three, or do you want me to do them as I break down?
We can do it separate, but why don't we just check in on people's comfort level with the provision for applicants who hold a combination of registration at the college and an equivalent college in another Canadian jurisdiction for a minimum of 3 years. If we want to do another high five on that piece. Okay, that looks good. And then what we'll do is throw to Brian for a motion.
Thank you, Sarah. So call for a motion. The motion will read to approve the proposed amendment to the contact lens mentor policy and student intern supervision policy to include a provision for applicants who were registered as an optician in another Canadian jurisdiction where opticianry is a regulated profession for a minimum of 3 years, or hold a combination of registration in the COO and the equivalent college regulating opticianry in another Canadian jurisdiction for a minimum of 3 years. I know it's a bit of a mouthful, but
yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah. So I'll ask for a mover and a shaker.
Steve? Samir?
Steve is, Samir, you missed out on that one, buddy. Steve
right,
is number one, Samir is number two. All in favor? Thumbs up.
Okay.
Up. And it looks like we have consensus. Okay, so we'll move on to the contact lens mentor policy.
Yeah. So the current student intern supervision policy and contact lens mentor policy require that opticians who act as supervisors be registered with the college, be in good standing without terms, conditions, or limitations on their certificate of registration, and be actively and currently practicing for a minimum of 3 years. The student intern supervision policy also allows individuals who acquired the necessary knowledge, skill, and judgment in a period of less than 3 years to be eligible for supervision of the eyeglass fittings of student and intern opticians. To bring both the requirements of both policies into parity, the registration committee proposed an amendment to the contact lens mentor policy to allow opticians who acquire the necessary knowledge, skill, and judgment in a period of less than 3 years to be eligible for supervision of the contact lens fittings of student and intern opticians. So basically, we just want to bring our policies so they actually are in parity with each other, so they're not we don't have different standards and different policies. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so Derek, did we want to test for consensus on that piece?
Yeah.
So just a reminder, it's for individuals who acquired this knowledge, skill, and judgment in a period of less than 3 years to be eligible for supervision of the contact lens fitting of student and intern opticians. Show of high fives. There you go, Mike. Thank you. Seeing mostly 4s and 5s, so we have consensus. Okay, so what we'll do is throw to Brian for a motion on that one.
Thank you, Sarah. So the motion is a little shorter this time. The motion to approve the proposed amendments to the contact lens mentor policy to allow individuals who acquired the necessary knowledge, skill, and judgment in a period less than 3 years to be eligible for supervision of the contact lens fittings of students and intern opticians. Call for a motion.
So moved, Henry.
Henry moves it and Edward seconds it. All in thumbs up.
Okay, the thumbs are coming. Okay, and we have consensus.
Motion passed.
Excellent.
Okay, so
And-
Derek the third, go ahead.
And my final one for the day. In light of the concerns identified by program coordinators about student access to contact lens mentors, the committee is recommending the adoption of an addendum to the contact lens mentor policy that will grant temporary contact lens mentor status to opticianry faculty that teach contact lens courses in academic settings. If approved, this temporary status will remain in effect until December 31st, 2020, at which time the committee can reassess the situation. So this is in relation to our COVID situation, and love to test for acceptance of that.
Okay, so let's do another high five around the temporary mentor status. Okay, Dorina, Mike. Okay, that looks like consensus.
Excellent.
So we'll put to Brian for a motion.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, the motion reads as to approve the addendum to the contact lens mentor policy to grant temporary status to instructors from accredited opticianry programs. Someone can move, please. Ed moves.
Omar. Second.
Omar, I believe I heard Omar second it. Thumbs up.
Seeing most thumbs up. Henry, did you? Oh, there we go. Gotcha. Okay, so there we
Okay.
go. We've got full consensus.
So that's it for me today. And on behalf of the registration committee, I would like to thank the board.
Thank you, Derek.
Thank you, Derek. So we're a little bit behind on the agenda, but I wanted to throw a new point of consensus out to the group around moving forward our break. Folks need to have a little bit of a stretch before we move on through the agenda. Do folks want to take a break now? Seeing some fives shoot up already, so I think we're on the right track there. So do we still feel comfortable going ahead with 10 minutes? Gives folks. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll put up a timer. It's 10:35, so we'll come back at 10:45. Okay, go stretch your legs, folks.
10 minutes, Gail. Oh.
Maybe we'll mute Henry's mic there as well.
I should have given a reminder about that, I guess.
Yeah, might take into a mute all.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Looks like I think most folks are back from break. Just a reminder just to put on your webcam once you are back. That way we know you're here. Hopefully everyone got a chance to stretch their legs. Okay, it looks like most folks are here. Do you want to wait? I know, Melanie, we're going to pass it on to you. Do you want to wait until we see all folks back at the table?
I think we're just waiting for Netta.
I think in the interest of time, we should stick to the timer
And just move ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, there she
Okay.
is.
Oh, super.
Okay, so
Go ahead.
Okay, so the board strategic agenda work plan is before you. This is a governance policy that you set your strategic agenda the end of the previous year and revise it mid-year. So you'll see that items that have been completed by the board are in green font, items not done yet in red font, and where a notation of a future date where they'll be considered. And then anything in blue is items that have been added to the agenda. Text in black is the board's original work plan. So updated for the board's consideration and approval. Also on the board's sort of to-do list is to consider whether to proceed with virtual training for the remainder of the year. So you'll see on the right-hand side of the chart, there's training throughout the year as per the board's direction. But given, our move to virtual meetings and the need to have shorter meetings instead of all-day meetings or two-day meetings, it's being suggested that the board might want to consider virtual training. So keeping your meetings to decisions and policy work only. And allowing also the appointed members to participate given the current restrictions and recommendations around physical distancing. So I'll throw it to Sarah.
Okay, great. So maybe we'll just do a high five in terms of comfort with the changes to the work plan. Are folks comfortable with those changes? Okay, I'm seeing some 4s, some 5s. Okay. Jarina, I think I missed your hand there, and Samir. Super. Thanks, folks. Sometimes it takes me a while to get there. Perfect. So it looks like we have consensus. So I'll pass it to Brian for a motion.
Thank you, Sarah. So the motion will read to
Sorry,
approve
sorry to interrupt. We also need some direction on the virtual training, if the board is comfortable with that.
Oh, sorry. Yes. So we'll get comfort level from folks on the comfort level with proceeding with the virtual training for the rest of the year. Show of hands again. Okay. And that looks like consensus as well. Okay, so now Brian, you're up.
Sorry, thank you very much. Okay, so the motion will read to approve the proposed amendment to the strategic work plan. Can I have someone to move it? Edward. Seconder. That's Mike. Thumbs up.
Okay, we're getting mostly thumbs up here. Okay, and that looks like consensus.
Motion passed.
Okay, so we'll pass it to Melanie for the action plan.
Thanks. So this is an update on your action plan, which is stemming from your self-evaluations in December. As you'll see, we're on track with many things completed or in progress. A couple of things not started. One of them is going to be scheduled in December. Another one needs some more board direction. There's a few things that need some additional clarification and direction from the board. The first one is action item number 3. So the board set a goal of continual environmental scanning on clinical practice issues. We're asking the board to, give some indication about the clinical issues you want to explore and what resources you'd like to hear from and receive. The second action item for the board is number 6. So you identified on your 2019 and 2020 work plans or action plans, that is, that you want to receive communications training on appreciative inquiry to strengthen your skills on asking questions about organizational risk. So attached as Appendix B is a training proposal for the board to consider whether this training meets their learning objectives that they expect. So we'll perhaps take some feedback, and if there's a lot of feedback on item 3 in particular, we can send a survey around to gather that additional feedback.
Good. Any initial feedback from folks around the additional goals for the year and the environmental scanning on clinical issues? Okay, I don't see any hands. Okay. So, Melanie, in the interest of time, do you want to just suggest that we move forward with a survey to get some of that feedback?
Sure.
Okay, super.
The other item is, any additional goals the board has outside of its strategic plan or this action plan. Is there anything else the board wants to tackle before the end of the year?
Any comments or thoughts
can we
on that?
cross that one off?
Any additional goals, folks, for the year? Okay, I see Omar's hand.
I don't know if this question is related to the point, but it's something I have in mind here. Now that we're doing a lot of the virtual training, do we have a comprehensive set of tracking mechanism in place to measure in a balanced way effectiveness in our virtual training versus when we were doing physical training?
Melanie?
We've been collecting, just collecting surveys post-training about whether the board felt the training was valuable and sort of met their expectations. Is that something of interest to explore further?
It is, but somehow I'd like to see a little more depth into it.
Okay.
In terms of how effective is the virtual training versus the in-house training. I know because of the pandemic, there's no other alternative.
Mm-hmm.
But I just like to see that more effective way in measurement.
So Omar, if I can just ask for clarity, is it from the perception of the board member, are they feeling it effective as far as a delivery method, or is it the board member's performance after the training that you're trying to determine were they effectively trained or not?
Board members after the training.
So we'd have to literally almost test you on a skill then, I guess.
Perhaps, yeah. If that's a way of getting a further and a deeper understanding, by all means,
Yeah. So I think we'd have to figure that out, and also the board's appetite to be tested, I guess.
Because it's good to have all these options available for training, etc. But at the same time, we want to see how effective and meaningful and forthcoming it is on an individual basis.
So do we want to step back and maybe evaluate, is training effective for board members, or do you want to really delve right into the difference between virtual and not? Because as you said, we may not have an alternative temporarily during the pandemic to be conveying in-person training.
If I may, Fazal, sorry. I'm okay to talk.
Go ahead, Mike.
I'm just wondering in the surveys, maybe, and Omar's, that we could say, come up with some questions, what we want to get out of the training and whether we did.
Yeah, that's a good survey question.
Okay, so potential to move forward with sort of a surveying of the effectiveness of those virtual trainings. Okay. Are there other goals or feedback along those lines that folks have? Okay, and Jacqueline, I see your hand up.
I guess my question is, when we're doing the virtual training, the agenda and the content isn't changing from whether we're sitting in the office and learning about it versus receiving that training online. As long as the content and the agenda and what we're receiving isn't changing, I'm struggling to understand why perhaps we would need to be tested because we weren't physically present. This virtual audience allows us to, take in and participate as if we were in the room, except that we can't be in the room due to COVID. So I'm just trying to understand, I guess, the difference between the two and why we would want to evaluate differently. I like the question that Mike is suggesting, but I guess is it the platform by which we're receiving the education?
Maybe I can step in here. So I can confirm the content is not changing given the virtual platform. And we're using all available virtual tools to simulate an in-person experience. For example, with our diversity training, we would have had breakout sessions in the room, in the physical room, and we did have that in the chat rooms. So just to give you an example of how we're utilizing the technology to ensure that the learning experience is a quality one.
Sarah, I think Peggy had a point.
Yeah, Peggy, go ahead. And then Dorina.
Oh, Peggy,
you're
is
on
muted.
mute. Sorry. If we're asking questions about whether of the participant of whether the training was effective or not, but they've not participated in an in-room one, but only on a virtual one, maybe they can't really assess the difference, and it almost needs to be the other participant saying, and this gets very difficult in terms of testing of whether or not that it was effective and those members learned what they needed to learn and managed to adopt it.
Okay, so some concerns around a baseline or an ability to compare if folks haven't seen it.
And I have to question about efficiency maybe of how necessary is this.
Okay. Melanie, I don't know if you want to comment at all or if we want to move.
Sure. Yeah, if Dorina wants to speak, and then I can go after.
Great. Okay, go ahead, Dorina.
Yes, thank you. I think the value of being there in person and online is equal. I don't think we're missing anything out, and I think the value of our understanding of the training material relies on the individual. So if anyone didn't understand, should actually put the hand up and go over again. And I think we're doing equally good, whether we were in person or online. I think we're just fine. As Melanie said, the material is the same, the level of understanding may differ, but the result is equal.
Okay, thanks, Dorina. And just a note that Jacqueline has had to hop off of the meeting, so she's off now. So we have a hand up from Brian, but I know, Melanie, we're going to let you go next.
Okay, so just in terms of comparison to what you expected and what you learned. We can always, in the invite and materials that are circulated ahead of time, include some of the learning outcomes. So the board can compare whether they felt they achieved those learning outcomes. As to whether it's necessary, I think the board set out in its action plan and also in a strategic plan that it wanted to move the needle on its training and understanding, like certainly in the areas of communication and monitoring reports. And, so we're proceeding with all other aspects of college business. So, the board might not want to put that on hold. We're still working and doing our work. All this could be included in a survey to the whole board, talking about the goals, the virtual training, the environmental scanning, to gather that feedback and bring it back to you.
Thanks. How does that sound for folks if that's included in kind of that larger survey, is to look at the potential to use those learning outcomes in advance to sort of test whether the board has achieved them? Would folks feel comfortable with including that within the survey? I'm seeing some hands up, so we can do it that way. And Omar and Brian, I know you're still on the panel for questions, but I'm seeing some hands up for that. Brian, did you want to go next?
Yeah, I think we're trying to overcomplicate this, and again, looking at the clock. Getting back to original question that Omar had, the question was the outcomes, were they as efficient? And I'm paraphrasing Omar, as being online as compared to being in person. I think we've established that the material is pretty well the same. I do like if I don't like the idea of testing. I think we're overly exaggerating it. I think that what Mike's suggestion was, with 2 simple questions at the end of the training, would be sufficient. I don't think you should be delving too deep and putting too much effort or emphasis on what the efficiency of this is. You would get that from those 2 questions.
Okay, thanks, Brian. I'm seeing some nods. Omar, you had your hand up, and then I'll let Melanie give some last comments.
Yeah. I don't want to be misunderstood that the effort and resources the college is placing into the training is not something effective and worthy. Of course it is. But as I indicated, that my only not quite only concern is that it's been received in an effective way by everyone. That the outcome is there. The outcome is successful. It has value. That's all. It's the outcome that matters. And if it's so, then great.
Okay. Thanks, Omar. And so it sounds like, and I know, Melanie, you're going to follow up with a survey. We may be able to get to some of those gains by looking at those learning outcomes and potentially a simple couple of questions out to folks. Melanie, did you have any other comments on that piece?
No, I think it's all been said by the board.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I said you'll hear from me.
Okay. Okay, so watch for an email from Melanie. The other piece that we wanted to connect on was with respect to the training ask, whether the proposed training on communications/appreciative inquiry meets your learning goals. And maybe we can use a consensus for that one. A high five. Okay, I'm seeing high fives. Okay, so it looks like we have consensus there. And I understand that Melanie will be following up with some doodle polls around the virtual training dates. Or if not yourself, Melanie, someone from staff will.
Yeah.
Okay, so that looks good. I think we have consensus on all of those pieces. No need for a motion, it looks like. So we'll move on to Brian to look at the potential approval of the revised committee slate.
Sorry, I was on mute again. That's 11.4, right, Sarah, that we're on?
Sorry, I was muted now too. So we're on 10.0, the public appointee committee recommendation.
Sorry about that. Yes. Okay. So this is a recommendation from the executive committee. The thought process behind this was to fill in some of the gaps that potentially will take place with the departing of Jack and Omar. So the recommendations from the executive committee were, in fact, to plug those holes up or at least to add Henry and Peggy onto those particular committees now, so that they could get their feet wet, so to speak, and could be able to jump in and when the time comes that the positions will be vacated by the previous two public members, that they would be in full speed ahead motion, and they'd be acquiring and acknowledging what they were doing on those particular committees. So that's the purposes of this particular recommendation. And Sarah, I guess you will ask for any questions on that.
Yeah, any questions or concerns on that piece? Okay, I don't see any raised hands, so I will assume that there's no significant concerns. And Brian, I'll pass it to you for a motion.
Thank you. So the motion will read to approve the committee slate as presented. Can I have a mover? All right, I saw Mike's hand up first and Ed second. We're going to go to the thumbs up.
Okay, and they're rolling in here. Okay, and I'm assuming, Henry, are you just abstaining because it would apply to you?
That's my thinking.
Okay, then we are in favor.
Motion passed. Thank you.
Okay, super. So then we'll pass it to Fazelle for the registrar's report.
Okay. I will, again, try to make some quick work of this. Everyone's got, oops. Yeah, I'm not muted. Okay, so everyone's got this in their package. Continuous improvement. Just a few notes. Internally, we're working, always working on our database. So two things are coming up. One is the ability for students and interns to be able to renew online. That project actually was slated for a little later in the year, but was moved up. Registration committee the registration department was able to get that portal launched. The other thing is also we expect, we were doing some final testing, but the quality assurance online portfolio will have the ability to not only log your accredited activities, but as well your unaccredited activities and the self-evaluation. So that'll all be there. So by the end of the year, we'll have a fully paperless quality assurance portfolio available. As far as external relations go, I'll just point out that our college, along with the College of Optometrists, was selected to present at the CNAR regulatory symposium for the fall. So we'll be speaking about lessons learned from the legal case that we had recently, and talking about the emergence of disruptive technology and the opportunity that it created for us to revise our standards of practice to reflect patient preferences in healthcare delivery. So we'll be on a guest panel speaking to that. And I think Brian has already spoken about the appointments and the end of terms for certain members. So I think that's about it for the registrar's report. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to take any.
Great. Any questions from folks? Let's see. Mike put his hand up. Yep. Go ahead, Mike.
Fazelle, do we have any plan, excuse me, to do with the portfolio that's going online for, I know that we all got email blasts about it coming and to set it up. I think it would be advantageous for us to put something together for a similar to what we're doing now, but tape maybe that any registrant could go on and learn and walk them through the process? One up?
Of how to use it?
Yes.
Yes, definitely. We will produce a little video vignette and put it online, walking somebody through it. So I'll definitely speak to quality assurance about that with Peggy to make sure that we have a video to assist the registrants. So great suggestion, Mike.
Good. Any other comments? Okay, it doesn't look like there's any hands raised, so I'll pass it to Brian for approval of the reports.
Thanks very much, Sarah. So 11.4, we are in the aspect of approving the reports, the committee reports. Again, this is done all in one or an omnibus situation. Everybody's had a chance to read the package and if they have any questions, I think, Sarah, you will be asking them to ask them then. And if there is none, then we'll call for a motion.
That's right. Any questions at all from folks? And again, you can raise your virtual hand. I don't see any. So again, we'll take that as no significant concerns. So I'll pass it back to you, Brian.
Thanks, Sarah. So motion will read to approve the committee reports, communications report, and exams report as presented. Looking for a hand. Ed? Anetta? Look for the thumbs.
So I'm coming in here. Okay, and Henry, are you abstaining on this one? Oh, there we go. Okay, so that's all in.
Motion passed. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so we're going to look at the annual report now with Fazal.
Okay, the annual report board is presented in front of you. Every year we put out an annual report from the summarizing the previous year. So the 2019 annual report is in front of you. Hopefully you've all had a chance to review it. The finances that are enclosed in the annual report were already approved at the May board meeting, and they were given by our auditor. So they have been included in this. That's our regulatory requirement to publish an annual report, an audited report. So hopefully if you're in agreement, we'd just like to get your approval to accept the annual report, and then we'll be publishing it on our website.
Any questions before we move forward with a motion? Okay, so Brian, that's to you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So the motion will read to approve the annual report as presented. Looking for a hand. That's Mike. Netta, number 2. Thumbs.
He's getting very quick with the thumbs up. Nice.
That's right. Okay. And Peggy, were you abstaining? Okay, just want to unmute
Yes.
and yes.
Yes.
Okay, and was there sort of a reason for abstaining?
I just feel that I haven't, as a member, been participant in things for the last year.
Okay, so we'll note that. Otherwise, all look like they are in favor.
Thank you very much. Motion passed.
And if I can just put in one more comment, this is a new process for us asking about reason for abstention. So it's by no means for you to defend your position of why you're abstaining, but just so that we can note it as per policy in our meeting minutes.
Great, thanks. Okay, so we'll pass it to Steve for a presentation of the executive committee mandate in terms of reference. Steve,
You're on mute.
Okay, as Sarah indicated, it's the terms of reference. The report is on the screen in front of you, and the governance committee continues to work on its policy on the manual, and this is the first of 8 committee terms of reference that the committee is going to be looking at each year. And I just want to remind the board, these new terms of reference reflect the duties of the executive committee as such. The executive committee it's not that it's to reduce its powers, it's to just show that the executive committee isn't running the whole organization in that power. It's actually the board that runs the college, and the executive committee will just make recommendations to the board as a whole. So having said that, if everyone's had, I'll put it out to discussion if anyone wants to discuss the proposed report in front of you.
So any questions or concerns about the changes? Not seeing any hands. Why don't we do look for consensus around the changes that are reflected to the executive committee terms of reference? Do folks feel comfortable with those? Show of hands again. Okay, just hold them up for one more moment. Okay, it looked like everyone was good with those. Okay, so we will throw to Brian for a motion. Oh, and Brian, you're muted.
Sorry, Sarah. Okay, so the motion, I don't necessarily see the motion in front of me here. Is there a motion on this particular package?
There's a motion to approve the executive committee terms of reference and mandate policy.
Okay.
0.09, as recommended by the governance committee.
As recommended by the governance committee. So I could like to see a mover and a shaker on that. It's Edward.
Second, Henry.
Netta Beecha. Let's see some thumbs.
Okay, and it looks like they're all up there. We're getting real quick.
Everybody wants to get this going.
And so we'll pass it back to Steve to continue.
Thank you. This is the governance committee terms of reference and mandate. And again, it's policy, mandate policy 4-09. And it's reflecting a cleaner version, and Appendix B is attached as to what was written before. And it's pretty self-explanatory. And they're just follow me here. And I would just invite the board to have any discussion on the policy.
Okay, comments or feedback related to some of the extended duties of the governance committee? Okay, again, I'm not seeing any comments. Is everyone comfortable with these changes? A show of hands with the high five. Looks like we are. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. So I will pass over to Brian for a motion on this one.
Thank you, Sarah. So the motion will read to approve the governance committee's term of reference and mandate policy 4-09 as recommended by the governance committee.
Moved, Henry.
Henry's got his hand up. Ed's got his hand up. So let's mover and a shaker. And we go for the thumbs.
And it looks like we are all there.
Motion passed.
Super. Okay, so we are going to pass back to Steve for the appointed member policy.
Thank you. This particular policy is to ensure consistency with the new board meeting policy of 4-22 and the board's decision of October 7th, 2019. Item number 10, it's been added to the appointed members policy 4-06 to reflect the coherence and the uniformity, and is attached for the board's information. And it's pretty, again, it's everything, the appendix is attached, and if you had a chance to read it, and I'll open it up for any discussion.
Comment or questions on this piece? Okay. And I don't see any hands up for folks. Let's do I I guess we're looking for information only on this
Yes,
piece. So
that's correct.
So if there's no questions or concerns, I think we can move forward with Steve on hearing about the pre-election training module policy.
Thank you. This is following the agenda. We'd moved it earlier, item 12.6, the election training module policy 4-18. And what there's been lots of discussion on this, and one of the college's goals in the 2022 strat plan is to transform and streamline the board's governance while strengthening our public trust in the college and within our process. And this is the next change that can be made without any legislative intervention. And this is about the development of a more robust, transparent, and qualification process to run for the board. And boards are educational components of the election criteria, so that a person coming on has a base knowledge so they contribute to the decision and at the board level. Many colleges have this in place or are putting it into place in the future. The Ministry of Health is developing a performance measurement framework that all health work colleges will be required to comply with once finalized. It's likely that the performance measurements framework will continue into the future as we move forward. So, having said that, we are recommending in the public interest consideration that this be approved by the board. And I'll put it out for discussion because I expect there will be good discussion on this particular policy.
Questions or comments from folks around a pre-election module? I see Brian's hand.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. Steve, in this package, it specifically then it allows, just for clarification, it allows a new individual coming on council to run for president and vice president in that same year?
Yes, it does.
Okay. I do have a slight problem with that, is that I do think that there is, for those particular positions, it is advantageous to have someone that has had some seasoning, so to speak, on council before that happens. So that's my only comment on that, is that I just have some hesitation in supporting that particular part of the package.
Okay, and Fazella, I see your hand. Brian, I'm wondering if we note your comment there and just parking lot it to the expression of interest element of the agenda, and we hone in here on the pre-election module, if that works for folks. So if we keep this to the pre-election module piece, Fazella, did you have additional
That was
comment?
exactly it. No, that was
Okay.
exactly it. Thank you, Sarah.
Dorina, I saw your hand.
Yes, thank you. So if anybody is mandated to go through any sort of test for pre-election, why shouldn't we have all the members of the board going through the same scrutiny? So if this is new, we are allowing new elected members to join the board based on the criteria. So they have to go through certain steps, such as going through jurisprudence to learn more things. Shouldn't the board members be up to date with that?
Okay, so a question around, should that then apply to existing members?
Yes.
Okay.
That's certainly something, if that's what the board if they'd like direction given back to the governance committee to review that, or we just, that's the report is what the committee has put forward at this time based on the past direction from the board of directors.
And this, I guess this specific question is around asking around kind of that the initial process to kind of get up to speed before coming on board.
Specifically incoming members for now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions from folks around this pre-election module piece? don't see any. Let's do a show of 5 for agreement and moving forward around a pre-election module. Again, 5, you love it. 4, you can live with it. 3, you'd want changes. Okay, so keep a hold of those hands. Henry, I missed your hand there. I saw 1. Okay, I'm going to note that and we'll come back to you. Peggy and Diana, I also missed your hands. A 3. Okay, so let's just go back to Henry for a moment. So Henry, you had a 1, which sort of means you don't like it at all. So is there a way for us to move you? What might get you to a 4 on this one?
Well, I'm just a little fuzzy on this whole thing, what we're talking about pre-election module. I like the comment that was made to vote in an executive or president position without the person having had at least a year of experience on a board. Just makes no sense to me at all.
So, and we will do a separate motion on that particular piece. So we will have a chance for some further discussion on that one. Do you have concerns, Henry, with the concept of a pre-election module specifically?
For example, does this apply to me?
I don't believe so, but I'll let
No.
the team, okay.
It would apply to incoming opposition candidates looking for election to the board.
Okay. Okay, I'll back it up.
Okay, that was a good move to a 1 to a 5. There we go, Henry. Peggy and Peggy's to a 4. So let me just see everyone's hands one more time so I didn't miss anyone here before we go forward to make sure. And let me know if I do miss you. But it looks like we have consensus here. Okay. So on that piece, before we move forward with the motion, I just want to let Fazal tell you a bit about the chat with the registrar concept.
Sure. Part of one thing that we just wanted to check in with the board is at administration, we were talking about the training that we were receiving on diversity and equity and inclusion, and trying to attract a more diverse base to the elections pool. And so one of the thoughts we thought we would have is to put together almost sort of a virtual chat at this point, where we would invite registrants who are potentially interested to sign in and be part of a structured, but at the same time, a little bit of an informal chat session where we would talk about what's involved in being a board member. What are the responsibilities? What are the time commitments? What are sort of the rewards that come out of it? And try to entice people from different backgrounds who might not think that they have the right skill set or anything to apply for the board, to have an honest conversation with us. Perhaps we would include a couple of board members as part of our round circle chat that maybe represent certain demographics that might be underrepresented and who could maybe be champions of attracting a more diverse base to our board elections. So it was something that we were sort of working on in the background at the administration level, along with sort of an agenda and things, and putting out a call. So we thought we would just check in with the board and see if this is something that you feel is a good idea, have any input on, or horrible idea.
How do folks feel about that concept of a chat with the registrar? Oh, going straight into high fives. Okay, let me just take a look here then. We'll do a formal high five since I got some organic ones. Samir? Okay. That looks like it's across the board. Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Great. That was quick. So what I'll do now is pass it to Brian for a motion.
Thank you, Sarah. So the motion will read to approve the pre-election training module policy 4-18 and the bylaw Article 1 and 6 amendments as recommended. Who's up to bat? Mike and Netta. Thumbs up.
Number of thumbs, and it looks like we have all thumbs. There we go. We're all in favor.
Motion passed. Thank you.
Good. Okay, so we'll pass it back to Steve for the committee evaluations.
Okay. Excuse me, just like get my paperwork caught up here.
You have a lot to do here, Steve, so it's
I do.
It's understandable to get lost in it.
Papers were sticking together. Okay, this is for consideration of, for both the committee evaluations are attached on the Appendix A. And for each topic of the evaluation, the report provided the numerical results. And based on the committee responses, action plans have been recommended for these committees, which may continue to access resources and increased opportunities for growth in the future. In 2019, the board used an abbreviated version of the evaluation tool, and therefore the committee self-evaluations were also brief. In future, the survey will be monitored to include a box so that the committee members can clarify their responses should they wish. And you can see the attached results that are in front of you. And this is just for information of the board today.
Okay. Are there any questions about the committee evaluations? Give folks a moment. It doesn't look as though there is. Super clear, Steve.
Thank you.
So now we'll let you go ahead and present on the governance committee's recommendations on the expression of interest, as well as the executive eligibility criteria.
Yes. This should generate discussion, and rightly so. I just want to remind the board, this goes back to the feedback in February that was taken into consideration and when reviewing this whole topic. First off, we just want to make sure that it just helps others make decisions about who to nominate and who to vote for. Make the process fair and more transparent by discouraging discussions with about candidates outside of board meetings. It also, the post would provide a means to demonstrate how the board member meets the competencies required for the executive role and reflects that the board entrusted with the responsibilities to maintain accountability, transparency, integrity, and the enforcement of any key principles, and they can continue to be an effective governing body. And the rationale that for coming up with this proposal in front of you today is the board did consider it initially back on the matter of February 27th, and it was noted that the matter was considered in 2014. The feedback from the governance committee and stakeholders was not to introduce an experimental requirement. The board was presented with an environmental scan indicating that no other colleges include an experimental requirement for election to executive for the chair role. And this was discussed from the February 26th meeting, item 9.2. New members might not have the experience on the board, but they will have other competencies and experience that they have valuable assets to the executive board, and having expression of interest articulated ahead of time allows them to demonstrate this. And introducing board experience as a key feature may place excessive emphasis on the competency over the important competency like skills and attributes the board may find essential in the individual serving on the committee. And I'll open it up for discussion.
Okay, so thanks, Steve. I do anticipate that we will have some conversation here. I wonder, in the interest of just carving out the conversation, if we start by looking at the concept of whether directors should be required to submit an expression of interest. How do folks feel about that piece specifically? questions or comments, or maybe move forward to show of hands? I'm seeing folks doing that. So let's look for consensus there on the expression of interest. Samir, Peggy, I don't see your hand. And okay, super. Thank you, folks. Okay, so it looks like we have consensus about requiring a submission of expression of interest. So then now let's move to discussion around the recommendation that no prior experience be required in order to run for a position on the executive committee, and that directors would be eligible, or that incoming directors rather would be eligible. Questions or comments on that one? I know we had some questions earlier, so I want to make sure we revisit that. Henry?
Explain to me, whoever put this together, what the rationale for that is.
So just a little bit of clarity around the decision for the recommendation.
Yeah,
Steve?
that you don't, that you can be elected, in the executive without having a year, for example, on the board.
Steve, did you want to maybe clarify some of the committee decisions leading to that recommendation?
Yes, the last board meeting, the board directed us to look, there was comments in regards to whether people should have a certain specific amount of time for applying for the board, and to eliminate any, let's say, backroom dealings or discussions about who should be nominated for the board or not. And so we took that into consideration, and that all went into the drafting of this policy. So if that helps clarify it.
Well, no, not really. It doesn't explain why you shouldn't have. The only way you can apply for that kind of position by at least having a year of minimum experience on the board. End of discussion.
Okay.
Well, just that no other colleges require that right now. And so this is something new, but something, that's just why the policy is put to the board today for discussion. And if the board chooses to change that, we can certainly look at changing that.
Okay, I don't want to monopolize this conversation, but for example, I'm just got on the board. So let's say one more board meeting, they decide that, we'd like you to be chair or something like that. What would be the logic there?
Well, perhaps your background and experience would allow you to take on that job if you felt necessary that you could undertake it.
Okay, so, and I'll move on here from a few other folks. So just to summarize some of the pieces that Steve had kind of reiterated there, that the recommendation was put forward on the basis of what other similar committees are doing currently, and that there was no other folks that were making that requirement. So I've got Mike, and then Diana, and then Brian. Mike, go ahead.
Thank you. Just for Henry and for somebody to run, they may have, we didn't want to exclude, there was lengthy discussion around, we didn't want to exclude, as somebody had already said, that may have a skill to bring to the executive that no one else knows about. And it's not a motion or a opportunity that somebody new coming may have the skill and think, and no one knows them, so that they could still offer up. So you still have to apply, or not apply, but say that you want to be part of the executive with skills that you have, and let the board decide whether that's in a vote. We didn't want to eliminate anybody. And then as an elected member, you may be someone that came because you can do 3 consecutive 3-year terms being elected, and have been on executive, and then did your sabbatical away from the board for 3 years, and then got reelected, as in my case. And then I could put my name forward with knowing that I've had the position. But if I had to wait a year, then so that was sort of the rationale. We didn't want to eliminate anybody. I hope I've helped in the discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Diana?
Yep, as Mike said, we didn't want to exclude incoming members who may have invaluable experience to bring to a committee or a board position.
Great. Thank you, Diana, for that clarity. Brian?
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, I guess we have to break this down a little bit further. In other words, the ask here is to be available or have eligibility for the executive. And then the next ask is the eligibility, which is part of the executive, is the president or vice president. I'm still hesitant about the executive. I could probably live with someone just coming on board that could be on the executive, perhaps because of one of their skill sets. But I'm going to the next step further, which would be the president and the vice president. I have strong feelings that there at least should be some kind of experience involved when an individual is going to be running for those particular positions.
Other thoughts or comments from folks? I see Omar's hand. Go ahead, Omar. And you're just muted.
Okay, sorry about that. I know in the past we had some discussion surrounding this issue, and because of the lack of transparency in which elections had taken place, every position on this on the board comes with a certain level of decency, of integrity, of trust, and all the other values that goes with it. I agree, yes, that that new members may have their qualification and the experience, to fit the requirements. But at the same time, in terms of being on the executive or vying for the executive position, I think there should be some steps leading towards that. It should not be an automatic choice in terms of your throwing your hat into the race. There should be a qualifying process. In that way, you get your feet wet. You understand the visions, the visions and the mission of the college. As a public member, it took me almost 3 years to get a genuine understanding of the vision and the way forward of this college. It took a lot of training. This college had invested a lot of resources and time and energy into training us so that we can become better represented at the board level. And as such, we have to show value to this thing. Now we have to treat it with respect. So I'm in agreement with our president that it should not be an automatic choice, but it should be a qualifying process.
Okay, so a suggestion there for a qualifying process. Peggy, I see your hand up.
With the exception, I think it was Mike saying he'd been on and he'd been off, so he comes with experience. I'm agreeing with what Brian said about people may bring a specific skill set to be on the executive, but when you start talking about the president and the vice president, and they're leading things, I think that getting to know how things run, the history of it, etc., is very important. Unless you're very specifically looking for some sort of turnaround, people need to understand the framework in which they're operating for those kinds of positions.
Okay, so we've heard from some folks that they may be open to the idea, but some concern around particular levels of positions. So I saw some physical hands, I think, from Henry, and then Dorina, did you have your hand up as well, or? Yes, okay, so we'll do Henry and then Dorina.
Okay, I like Brian's comments and Omar's. I'd say ditto to that. That's good.
Okay. So again, dittoing the concept of some positions would be you'd be less favorable for having no prior experience. Jarina?
Yes, what I wanted to say is the qualifying reason is it should apply even to the folks that were prior, they were part of the college board of directors even before a sabbatical period, because it shouldn't be by default a fact of the matter that they know the ins and outs of the college, because legislation and the way things are run currently are much different than years before. So I think it's a strong qualifier for everybody.
Okay, so suggestion that there not be exceptions. Mike, I saw your hand, and if that's good with folks, we'll make that the last comment, and then we'll look to how we move forward on this one. Mike.
Thanks. I was just clarifying for Henry process that was in place, not to say that's what I'm in agreement of. Okay, I just was giving him examples, so that's just to clarify.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Okay, so let's just do a bit of a temperature check on this one using the high five process. So using the high five, your comfort with the executive committee's recommendation that no prior experience be required in order to run for a position on the executive committee, and that incoming directors would be eligible. So if I can see
Sorry, Sarah, could I clarify? It's the governance committee, not the executive committee, that recommended that.
It is the governance committee that recommended that. Yep, but that no prior experience would be required to run for a position on the executive committee, and that incoming directors would be eligible.
Sarah, is it okay if I just jump in right now?
Sure, of course.
Yeah, so before the board votes on this, just one thing to consider. Given the term lengths of public members and even potential elected members, you could be limiting yourself to the number of people that are eligible to sit on the executive. Especially important for public members because we have lots of new faces here. Appointments are being done a little differently for terms of lesser than 3 years. So it could be that you could be in a situation where you don't have quorum for the executive if you tie your public members from sitting or running on the exec if they haven't been on the board for a year. So one thing to consider there.
Okay, thank you, Melanie. Mike, did you want to add to that?
Yes, and maybe just for the new public members, we could have Brian go through, or Fazal or Melanie, whoever, just to what the executive is made up of. And do we still, just to clarify for me, is the president and vice president not chosen from the executive body? Thanks.
So maybe Fazal, I wonder if could you provide a little bit of that context?
Yeah, the composition of the executive is typically 3 elected opposition members and 2 public appointees. And out of that group of 5, the chair and the vice chair are selected. And
Sorry,
then
can I just offer a clarification there, Fazal? We don't
Yes, please, Amy.
select the executive group and then select a chair and a vice chair from within it. The elections go in a certain order. So the first election is for the chair, the second election is for the vice chair, and then we have 3 elections for each of the executive committee positions at large.
Right. Can we also just clarify one thing? We should probably separate talking about experience for positions of chair and vice chair from the discussion on experience needed for executive, because I think that's what Melanie was talking about that we ran into, for instance, in the current year where Stephen was the only one with 1 year's experience. And that's where we might get tied with trying to compose the executive. So I think for the conversation, we should handle it in chunks.
Okay, that works. I'm seeing some nods. Okay. Oh, and Brian, I have a hand from you.
Yeah, again, just for further clarification, is it possible to break it down into qualifications for executive and qualifications for chair and vice chair? I think that makes it easier. It might make it easier in the voting process because the requirements perhaps will not be as stringent for the chair and vice chair as they would be for an executive position.
Yeah. Does that work if we do the consensus, the high five process that way? And Fazal, would that achieve those gains, the goals?
Yeah, because I think we might be bundling too many things into one go.
Yep.
It's one thing that we need to compose up the executive, and it's another thing to lead as the chair or the vice chair. So I think those are two different conversations, and they might have differing results if we speak about them separately. So maybe, we could speak about one and then the other. I'm not sure what order you want to tackle it in.
Absolutely.
And I just butt it.
Sure, go ahead, Mike.
I just want to make sure that the new public members understand, because we are throwing a lot into a little basket.
Okay, so why don't we move to a high five, and then of course, if either you need further clarification or you don't agree, we can hear more at that point. So let's separate it out, and let's look at the issue of a recommendation that no prior experience be required to run for a position or to be on the executive committee, and we'll just keep it at that first part, and then we'll talk about specific positions after. So are people comfortable with people being on the executive committee with no prior experience? Okay, and keep your hands up because I'm just, okay, so I'm looking, I think I'm seeing all 4s and 5s. So it looks like folks are comfortable with that piece. We have consensus there. So then let's look next to comfort with people with no prior experience running for a leadership position like chair or vice chair. So I'm seeing I see a 0 even. That's not even an option, Omar. Okay, so we've got, it looks like folks are not, and in fact, I don't see anything above a 3. So in terms of next steps on that one, Fazal, do we want to separate that piece out? Do you want to take that piece specifically back to the governance committee? How do you want to treat that element?
I would acquiesce to the board's appetite. We are definitely behind on time, and don't want to make necessarily a rushed decision if we're seeing a lot of 1s and 2s and possibly nones. Would the board feel it appropriate for governance to look at the position of vice chair and chair and come back in October at the next board meeting?
Seeing a thumbs up, can we see a show of high five to take that back? That piece specifically?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent suggestion by Fazal. Yeah.
Okay, super. Okay, so what we will then do is, I think, move for Brian to call for a motion. I'm seeing a couple extra hands that have just gone up. Peggy and then Diana before we move to a motion. Any last comments?
I was just thinking that chair and vice chair maybe still require different levels of experience. So the chair for sure to have some experience on this particular board, and maybe not the vice chair, or maybe a lesser amount or something like that.
Okay, that's a good point for the committee to consider. Diana, anything in addition?
Yes, can we please have a show of hands separately for vice chair and for chair so that the committee has that information?
Okay, yep. And then before we do that, Brian, did you have additional comment?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, for the motion to be passed, I'm just wanting some clarification here. Is it possible that we could break it down and pass the motion for the board to accept the recommendations pertaining to executive qualifications only, and just leave the chair and vice chair and send it back to governance for reexamination? Does that make sense?
I think that makes sense based on the consensus voting. Does that work for folks in terms of the motion? Okay. Before I see Samir's hand up, so any last comments before we move to that motion?
So thinking about the, or speaking about president or vice president position, we're thinking to do two separate things. I personally think in the absence, in unfortunate circumstances, in the absence of president, vice president is the one that's going to handle all those matters. So I personally still feel that an experience is necessary for that as well.
Okay, noted. So I think in the interest in time and not to rush the decision, do we feel good moving forward with the motion as Brian suggested? Okay. Okay, so Brian, I will pass it to you if you
Sarah?
can remember. Yes.
Sarah, just before we do the motion,
Yes.
I think we should send it back for the language to be consistent from day one forward, and the governance committee bring it back to the board for approval rather than do it piecemeal, because then we'll have all the boxes will be checked when it comes back. So I would personally rather see it come to council as a whole rather than piecemeal. This is my comment.
Okay, a suggestion to then not move forward with the motion, but wait until we have an all-encompassing motion on this issue. Okay, I'm seeing a whole bunch of hands here now. Samir and then Diana.
I already had my discussion actually, but yeah, definitely I agree with Mike in that as well.
Okay, and Diana?
For Brian, does that put us in any awkward position in terms of timing? Like, is that going to delay anything that needs to be done if we don't get a motion to at least approve part of it today?
I'm sorry, Diana, I didn't hear the whole question. I think you were cut out.
Oh, yeah. So the question is in terms of timing, like if it goes back to the committee and then has to wait, delay this process, is there any advantage to approving part of it today?
I don't have the answer to that. I don't see the issue in approving the executive portion today because we've got consensus with the council here today. And all we're doing is just sending back the president, vice president's issue. I just don't see the need to send, if we've already got consensus on executive here, then why are we sending it back to governance?
Okay, so let's do a last high five on moving forward with the motion as Brian posed and see if everyone feels comfortable with that process and then revisiting after.
Sorry,
Okay, Henry?
Sarah, just before you move forward on that, I just will note that the proposed bylaw amendments that are on the table that you're potentially going to make a motion on would essentially make the eligibility for executive open to incoming directors, and that includes all positions on executive, including the chair and vice chair positions. So that is the bylaw amendment that is before you today. So if that's not something that the board is prepared to move forward on, then I would recommend deferring that until the committee has looked at it again.
Okay, thank you, Amy. That's excellent clarity. So based on that, why don't we do another high five just to see where we are at, and then we'll make a decision about how to move forward. So do folks feel comfortable moving forward with a motion that would allow no prior experience to the executive committee? And we have ones. Okay, So it looks like, based on that information, that we should probably bring that decision back to the board, to the governance committee rather, and then have that brought back at the next meeting. Fazal, any other comments or thoughts on that piece before we move on?
Sure. I was just actually discussing this with Melanie. I think even if it's brought back in October, we can still have it be effective for the incoming elections for this year. So I think even if we take the time on it, we'll still be on track for this year's executive.
Okay, good. Okay, so thank you everyone for your feedback on that one. I think a worthwhile discussion. So we're gonna,
Sarah?
oh, yeah.
Sorry to butt in. Just for the governance committee, can we give them a more, something from staff that'll go back to governance steps that we want to see fulfilled, bringing it back to council so we don't waste any more time, that all the boxes are checked. Thank you.
Yeah, so just to confirm that that the committee would get sort of the feedback, I guess, from this board as to the main concerns that have been raised here. And can someone confirm that process? Is that what?
Yes, like
Yeah.
we'll make sure that the governance committee transacts, reconfirms that council's wishes as far as being eligible for executive, and then look at the position of vice chair and the position of chair, and I think do them separately and ratchet it up from there. So we'll look at all those permutations, the unintended consequences, and we'll bring that all back to the board in the fall.
Perfect. Great.
As I'll also add into that, the process that like Amy had stated, that we elect the chair, the vice chair, and then the 3 remaining.
Yeah, that's actually already in
And
bylaw.
Yeah,
And
I know, but we just want to make sure that we're following, or they're following the process.
Absolutely.
Good. Okay, so we're going to shift gears now, and we'll revisit that as the committee brings forward those new recommendations. And we're going to invite Karen Friday-Field from Meridian Edge Solutions to speak now. So Karen is a governance expert that's been working with the governance committee and the board, and she will present the Registrar CEO engagement and compensation policy. So welcome, Karen, and I will pass that over to you.
Thank you, and good late morning, I guess early afternoon now to everyone. It's great to see the council, the board in action, and to hear what you're deliberating about. So can I just confirm with Sarah that you're asking me to speak to the Registrar CEO Compensation Program Principles Policy?
Yes, so we are looking to
12.7.
12.7.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, yes, I'm pleased to do that. You had a briefing note as council regarding the matter. And from that, you will understand that the goal of this policy is to create both a fair and transparent hiring process for the position, your position of Registrar CEO, and also a process for how initial compensation will be set, and then the principles for ongoing compensation, and really what the space is around a compensation for the CEO over time. In the actual appendix, which is where the policy is laid out for you, that's showing on the screen now, we'll just get down to the policy. There we go. Just a couple of key points. I don't intend to reiterate this because I know you've all had a chance to carefully consider and review it. I think it's extremely important. I don't think any further comments are necessary for the engagement process. We'll see if people have questions about that. With regard to Registrar and CEO compensation, I think it's important that as the world becomes increasingly transparent and demands increased transparency, and as your board governance continues to build in excellence, that there be an intentional stated way that the compensation is determined. And the space and the principles involved in this policy actually be stated. Sometimes boards are uncomfortable to put it actually in writing, but I can tell you more and more across the country in not-for-profit agencies, in public agencies, which you would be considered in governmental agencies, these principles are being written down so everyone knows the rules of the game, and it avoids that sort of backroom conversation and lack of transparency as to what the principles are that the group who's working on determining the compensation are required to work within. And they are really listed under this CEO compensation section. Just before we move down, I'd like to see number 4 on the screen. Thank you. The board is responsible for establishing and maintaining an appropriate, equitable, competitive compensation package. So there's one value of council that you by approving this policy at the recommendation of governance, you will be agreeing that your organization is working to attract and retain a highly skilled registrar, and that you are beginning to recognize that there should be some reward for extremely successful performance. I can share with you that in the public sector now, the most recent survey that I'm aware of was done by Munkle, but there are others out there. And it's showing that somewhere between 70 and 78% of organizations in Canada who are not-for-profit, for-public works, government works, and public organizations, I don't mean publicly traded organizations, but public organizations, and you would be in that category, are using at the CEO level and sometimes below that level, having some compensation at risk related to performance. And so that's what this reward meritorious performance means, that it's not necessarily that portion of performance pay is not necessarily achieved if performance isn't objectively shown to be stellar. I think the last thing I want to say about this policy before I turn it back to our chair is just a little bit about the criteria. So clearly compensation has to be built on the capacity that the organization has to work with. And also, while historical levels are relevant, they're only one factor. What you used to pay and what you're going to pay are not necessarily a straight line because the marketplace is changing. It clearly depends on what you expect of your registrar, executive director, and your new governance model. You have clarified and increased the empowerment and also the accountability of your registrar. And then of course you need to look at comparable market rates. And at the top of that page 4 of your briefing note that has number 6 on it there, this gives the space for all the things that the group working on the registrar's compensation in any one year, what they would be entitled to include based on objective criteria that will be discussed later in the compensation. I think it's also important to note that the compensation package, that there's a commitment, if board approves this policy, a commitment to review compensation annually. That doesn't mean that all of those things will be amended annually, but they will all be at least assessed annually, so that there is not a stagnant situation around continuing that commitment to keep attracting and retaining high quality, high talent staff. So with that, the rest of it just talks about some of the criteria around cost of living, merit increase, and what would be involved in that. I guess one last concept. There is proposed in this policy that the governance committee has worked on intensively and well. There is a proposal that there be the option for a merit increase on the base, which would mean it would be an ongoing increase based on certain criteria. That would not necessarily be given every year. It could be given every year. It's based on assessment. And then the other piece of the salary or compensation at risk would be a performance bonus that is also based on stellar performance, and it would be one time. And what I mean by one time is it's assessed in a year, and if it's given, it's just for that time. Then later in the next year, it could be reassessed again and would be just for that time, and it's not added onto the base of the salary. So I'm going to stop there and see what questions this raises through the chair.
Perfect. Thank you, Karen. And just a note that we are quite a bit over time, so I'll just check with folks to see any questions or comments related to that policy that was just outlined. And again, you can use your virtual hand to ensure you get caught. Okay. Looks like there's no further questions. So with that, I think we can move to a motion, which I'll pass to Brian.
Thank you, Sarah. So this particular motion is going to read as such: to approve the registrar's CEO engagement and compensation policy 3-09 as recommended by the governance committee. I need a mover and a shaker. Ed, Mike Smart, thumbs up.
Okay, we've got some rolling in.
Are they getting quicker with their thumbs, Sarah?
These are coming in quick. Okay, and there we I'm just seeing Henry, are you abstaining? Oh, got you there. Okay, so that is all in favor.
Motion passed. Thank you.
Great. So that concludes the public portion of the meeting. And I will pass it to Brian.
Thank you, Sarah. So now this concludes the public portion, the end of the, so thank you very much, attendees. If we could advise the appointed members to log into the Zoom at 12:15 for the college training session. Do we need a motion at this time, Fazelle, to close this particular part of the meeting?
So the meeting technically is not over. We will need a meeting to go into camera, a motion to go into camera.
Motion.